He's right, Mr. Harrigan said. Things had gone too far before anyone could put on the brakes. Of course, something like this might actually accelerate a sell-off. It's hard to tell because the technology is still so new. I waited. I wanted to tell him some more, sell him on it. I was just a kid after all. But something told me waiting was the right way to go. He continued to watch the minuscule gyration of the Dow Jones. He was getting an education right in front of my eye. But, he said, still staring. But what, Mr. Harrigan? In the hands of someone who actually knows the market, something like this could probably already does, he trailed off, thinking. Then he said, I should have known about this. Being retired is no excuse. Here's the other thing, I said. Too impatient to wait any longer. You know all the magazines you get? Newsweek and Financial Times and Forbes. Forbes, he said, still watching the screen. He reminded me of me at 4, studying the magic 8-ball I'd gotten for my birthday. Yeah, that one. Can I have the phone for a minute? He handed it over rather reluctantly, and I was pretty sure I had him after all. I was glad, but I also felt a little ashamed of myself, like a guy who's just clonked a tame squirrel on the head when it came up to take a nut out of his hand. I opened Safari. It was a lot more primitive than it is today, but it worked just fine. I poked Wall Street Journal into Google search field, and after a few seconds, the front page opened up. One of the headlines read, Coffee Cow announces closings. I showed it to him. He stared, then looked at the newspaper from the table beside the easy chair where I'd put his mail when I came in. He looked at the front page. That isn't here, he said. Because it's yesterday's, I said. I always got the mail out of his box when I came up, and the journal was always wrapped around the other stuff and held with a rubber band. You get it a day late, everybody does, and during the holiday season, it came 2 days late, sometimes 3. I didn't need to tell him this. He grumbled about it constantly during November and December. This is today's, he asked, looking at the screen, then checking the date at the top. It is. Sure, I said. Fresh news instead of stale, right? According to this, there's a map of the closing sites. Can you show me how to get it? He sounded positively greedy. I was a little scared. He had mentioned Scrooge and Marley. I felt like Mickey Mouse and Fantasia, using a spell he didn't really understand to wake up the brooms. You can do it yourself. Just brush the screen with your finger, like this. I showed him. At first, he brushed too hard and went too far, but he got the knack of it after all. Faster than my dad, actually. He found the right page. Look at that, he marveled. 600 stores. You see what I was telling you about the fragility of the... He trailed off, staring at the tiny map. The South. Most of the closures are in the South. The South is a bellwether, Craig. Almost always. I think I need to make a call to New York. The market will be closing soon. He started to get up. His regular phone was on the other side of the room. You can call from this, I said. It's mostly what it's for. It was then, anyway. I pushed the phone icon, and the keypad appeared. Just dial the number you want. Just the keys with your finger. He looked at me, blue eyes bright beneath his shaggy white brows. I can do that out of here, in the willy wags? Yeah, I said. The reception is terrific, thanks to the new tower. You've got 4 bars. Bars? Never mind. Just make your call. I'll leave you alone while you do it. Just wave out the window when you're done. No need. This won't take long, and I don't need privacy, he said. He touched the numbers tentatively, as if he expected to set off an explosion. Then, just as tentatively, he raised the iPhone to his ear, looking at me for confirmation. I nodded encouragingly. He listened, spoke to someone, too loud at first, and then, after a short wait, to someone else. So I was right there when Mr. Harrigan sold all of his coffee cow stock, a transaction amounting to who knows how many thousands of dollars. When he was finished, he figured out how to go back to the home screen. From there, he opened Safari again. Is Forbes on here? I checked. It wasn't. But if you're looking for an article from Forbes you already know about, you can probably find it, because someone will have posted it. Posted? Yeah, and if you want info about something, Safari will search for it. You just have to Google it. Look, I went over to his chair and entered coffee cow in the search field. The phone considered, then spewed a number of hits, including the Wall Street Journal article he'd called his broker about. Will you look at this? He marveled. It's the internet. Well, yeah, I said, thinking, well, duh, the World Wide Web. Yeah, which has been around how long? You should know this stuff, I thought. You're a big businessman. You should know this stuff even if you're retired, because you're still interested. I don't know exactly how long it's been around, but people are on it all the time. My dad, my teachers, the cops, everyone really. More pointedly, including your companies, Mr. Harrigan. Ah, but they're not mine anymore. I do know a little, Craig, as I know a little about various television shows, even though I don't watch television. I have a tendency to skip the technology articles in my newspapers and magazines because I have no interest. If you wanted to talk bowling alleys or film distribution networks, that should be a different matter. I keep my hand in, so to speak. Yeah, but you don't see those businesses are using the technology, and if you don't understand it, I didn't know how to finish it, at least without straying beyond the bounds of politeness, but it seemed he did. I will be left behind. That's what you're saying? I guess it doesn't matter, I said. Hey, you're retired after all. But I don't want to be considered a fool, he said, and rather vehemently. Do you think Chick Rafferty was surprised when I called him and told that I will be going to sell coffee stock? Not at all, because he's undoubtedly had half a dozen other major clients pick up the phone and tell him to do the same. Some are, no doubt, people with inside information. Others, though, just happen to live in New York or New Jersey and get the journal on the day it's published and find out that way. Unlike me, stashed away up here in God's country. I again wondered why he'd come to begin with. He certainly had no relatives in town. But this didn't seem like the time to ask. I may have been arrogant, he brooded on this, then actually smiled, which was like watching the sun break through a heavy cloud cover on a cloud day. I have been arrogant, he raised the iPhone. I'm going to keep this after all. The first thing that rose to my lips was thank you, which would have been weird. I just said, good, I'm glad. He glanced at the Seth Thomas on the wall, and then I was amused to see checked it against the time on the iPhone. Why don't we just read a single chapter today, since we've spent so much time talking? Fine with me, I said, although I would have gladly stayed longer and read 2 or even 3 chapters. We were getting near the end of The Octopus by a guy named Frank Norris, and I was anxious to see how things turned out. It was an old-fashioned novel, but full of exciting stuff, just the same. When we finished the shortened session, I watered Mr. Harrigan's few indoor plants. This was always my last chore of the day, and only took a few minutes. While I did it, I saw him playing with the phone, turning it on and off. I suppose if we're going to use this thing, you better show me how to use it, he said. How to keep it from going dead to start with. The charge is already dropping, I see. You'll be able to figure out most of it on your own, I said. It's pretty easy. As for charging, there's a cord in the box. You just plug it into the wall. I can show you a few other things if you... Not today, he said. Tomorrow, perhaps. Okay. One more question, though. Why could I read that article about Coffee Cow and look at the map of proposed closing sites? The first thing that came to my mind was Hillary's answer about climbing Mount Everest, which we had just read about in school, because it's there, but he might have seen that as a smartass, which it sort of was. So I said, I don't get you. Really? A bright boy like you? Think, Craig, think. I just read something for free that people pay good money for, even with the journal subscription rate, which is a good deal cheaper than buying off a newsstand. I pay 90 cents or so an issue, and yet with this, he held up the phone just as thousands of kids would hold their up at rock concerts not many years later. Now do you understand? When he put it that way, I sure did, but I had no answer. Sounds stupid, doesn't it? He asked, reading either my face or my mind. Giving away useful information runs counter to everything I understand about successful business practices. Maybe. Maybe what? Give me your insights. I'm not being sarcastic. You clearly know more about this than I do, so tell me what you're thinking. I was thinking about Freiburg Fair, where Dad and I went once or twice every October. He usually took my friend Margie from down the road. Margie and I rode the rides. Then all three of us ate Duff Boys and sweet sausages before Dad dragged us to look at the new tractors. To get to the equipment sheds, you had to go past the piano tent, which was enormous. I told Mr. Harrigan about the guy out front with the microphone, telling the passing folks how you always got the first game for free. He considered this. Ah, come on. I suppose that makes a degree of sense. You're saying you can only look at one article, maybe two or three, and then the machine, what sets you out, tells you if you want to play, you have to pay? No, I admitted. I guess it's not like the piano tent after all, because you can look at as many as you want, at least as far as I know. But that's crazy. Giving away a free sample is one thing, but giving away the store, he snorted. There wasn't even an advertisement. Did you notice that? And advertising is a huge income stream for newspapers and periodicals. Huge. He picked the phone up, stared at his reflection in the now blank screen, then put it down and peered at me with a queer, sour smile on his face. We may be looking at a huge mistake here, Craig. One being made by people who understand the practical aspects of a thing like this, the ramifications, no more than I do. An economic earthquake may be coming. For all I know, it's already here. An earthquake that's going to change how we get our information, when we get it, where we get it, and hence how we look at the world. He paused. And deal with it, of course. You lost me, I said. Look at it this way. If you get a puppy, you have to teach him to do his business outside, right? Right. If you had a puppy that wasn't housebroken, would you give him a treat for shitting in the living room? Of course not, I said. He nodded. You would be teaching him the exact opposite of what you want him to learn. And when it comes to commerce, Craig, most people are like puppies that need to be housebroken. I didn't much like the concept, and don't today. I think the punishment reward thing said a lot about how Mr. Harrigan made his fortune, but I kept my mouth shut. I was seeing him in a new way. He was like an old explorer on a new voyage of discovery, and listening to him was fascinating. I don't think he was really trying to teach me either. He was learning himself, and a guy in his mid-80s, he was learning fast.